Hi everyone, welcome to Rockstar Business World's interviews. I'm joined here today in the Rockstar Hub by Lara Morgan. Lara, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Excellent. Well, so thankful for you to be and giving up your time here today. So thanks firstly so much. Really looking forward to hearing your insights for our viewers. Obviously, I know your story. A lot of people watching this know your story, but some others might. So can I ask by starting, tell us a bit more about Lara Morgan's entrepreneurial journey and why you like giving back to entrepreneurs.
So the journey is a very lucky one, like many enterprise stories. I think the bad luck was my dad went bankrupt, so I had to get a job following finishing school. So I'm an ill-educated buffoon who then started my own business when I was 23, having got some sales experience, and I sold that business. 99% of the business I still owned for £20 million 17 years later, which is my enterprise journey up until the point that 7 years ago when I left that business, although I still own, I chose to hang on to 20% of it because it's a great company, Pacific Direct. I now have 7 different investment interests where I've either invented something new, I'm probably going to lose my shirt, so those are brands like Active Bod and Centred, both in the category from my sector where I came, which was selling luxury branded toiletries. And now I have some fantastic other, if you like, investment platform plays where I have Gate 8 luggage, brilliant transport, business luggage. I travel religiously and regularly like a lunatic. And I have Kit Bricks, which is a sports organizer bag, and I have Company Shortcuts, which is actually really the give back piece, where we teach people to sales accelerate. We educate British people to sell, which frankly is not evolutionary, it is revolutionary. So that's what I do.
Excellent. We'll be covering sales in more detail too, so look forward to hearing more about that, but thank you so much for that. So the first question I want to ask you today, Laura, is about starting up. I mean, the questions I'm going to be asking is almost through the actual journey of building, starting, building and then selling.
Yeah.
So let's start with the cold face, starting a business. We know what the success rates are here in the UK. You were able to do it successfully, take a business up to an exit of £20 million. What can people watching do now if they're going to start a business well?
I'm biased, so I'll declare my bias. I think that people starting up have to first of all prove a product, which means if you haven't proven it's going to sell, everything else is superfluous. So I think going out into the marketplace and not fanning around with conversations with friends who are going to lie to you, but actually speaking to strangers and saying, would you buy my product? What price would you buy it at? And how many will you order? So I'm also adding to that bias, which is saying, actually, I'm constantly horrified that people start businesses and they will admit they have no sales training, they don't understand the professionalism of selling, and they're still an embarrassed car salesman attitude, which we have to change. And so my first point is that, but actually another and absolutely meshed point is get your finances in order. If you don't understand the basics of cost price, margin, sales price, and all the other anomalies that go within sodding development and overhead and salary and the impact that is going to have on your ability to feed yourself, then you haven't got a chance. And too many times we're seeing people thinking that business, it will just all go right, when actually the resilience piece says that you're going to need that quality in spades. It won't all go right. It's like a building project. It's going to cost you twice as much and take twice as long.
Why is it then? I mean, I love, what I've always loved about you, Lara, I have to say, is your absolute frankness and to the point whenever you speak, which is it's a great thing that people need to listen to and take note. And I agreed with everything you just said. Why is it then that so many people who are so clueless spend money when they don't even know if their product's going to sell?
I was 23 when I started a business, but I'd had 5 years pretty cold-faced business experience. And is there a naivety and a human emotion that overrides common sense? Is there that delusionalism where you don't expose yourself because you're frightened of failing? I'm brilliant at making mistakes and accepting that I'll fail probably more than I succeed. But if I make mistakes fast, then actually I've got half a chance of making success. Many businesses fail. And I think, I'm a classic case that because I was a good salesperson, I got very lucky in the survival phase. And when I finally got a business plan, I took a business where We were 4.5 million turnover before I got a business plan, which is probably poor advice for anybody listening, but factually, I was already asking for help the whole damn way along, and begging, and doing anything that I needed to self-educate to get to where I needed to go. And I think that there's a lack of desire to learn, and we have to accept, I think, that the whole business process is relentless. It's always harder than people believe it's going to be. And I had lots of energy, and it was easier. No children, no nothing to slow me down. So when I screwed up, I could make up for it by working even harder. And then I think the other thing is that that proven thing where 9 years, 4.5 million, 664,000 profit, got a plan, got a business education. 8 years later, so less time later, 18.5 million turnover, much more importantly, and the real value piece, 3.3 million pounds profit. Talking in EBITDA, not the vanity of turnover and all the rubbish, because actually the measure is profit.
Absolutely, I think in all sectors. But thank you for that, for adding to that last question. The next question is very close to your heart because it's all about sales. You've mentioned already in your introduction that's something that you were trained in when you were young. It's not something you've ever been shy of doing, but a lot of people can be. What are some of the tips that you could give our viewers about how they can be better at selling their product?
I mean, at the most ridiculously basic level in terms of sales training, go on a masterclass, go on a sales training day. Find out that there is a professional process. Worst case, buy a sales book and start practicing what it's preaching. I still read sales books because my skills need to be honed, and I need to earn and learn the right language for where we are in the sales momentum. Today, there's a completely different methodology because the consumer is making decisions far further along the pipeline of discovery than we get to influence them digitally or otherwise. So we have to move with the times. And then actually be much more, I mean, my I guess killer enterprise sales tip is totally counterintuitive to good entrepreneurs, and I learnt this lesson in a painful way, which is stay focused on what you're really good at. The Jim Collins Good to Great book about driving your economic engine, maximizing your unique point of difference, and aiming to be world class. You combine those three elements and stay focused, and you then have a much higher chance capability of scaling it, being the best, staying ahead, and having all the benefits that brings. Finally, in sales, do a costing sheet that adds up and that is brutal about how much money it costs to get your product to the customer and what you're making.
And is there a lot of theory involved with that if you're early stage? Because sometimes you've just set up, you now have to get out there and sell as much of this as you can. So with a startup hat on, because it's not all about startups today, but with a startup hat on for sales, there's of course an element of guesswork there, isn't it, to do that?
Yeah, there is. But I mean, I guess I'm an old grey-haired salesperson these days. I mean, I've been literally selling for the best part of 30-something years, including cigarettes at school, which have the biggest margin yet. But if I'm talking about startup mode and selling, I'm talking about, I guess, roughing it out, and it's an Excel spreadsheet, but therein lies the lesson, which is it's not back of a fag packet. There are lines allocated to delivery, to picking, to packing, to branding, to royalties, to licenses, to returns, to a percentage related to your finance costs. I could go on for a very long list, but I think you're getting a sense of detail.
Absolutely.
So I see it as inexcusable not to cost the product or the service you're offering. And don't come to me with there's a difference between service and product, because a service is an hourly rate, plus petrol, plus intelligence, plus advanced planning, plus a brutality about how long did it take you to win the business. So what's your pipeline investment time? And then a proportion of your digital cost. And if you really want to pack it in, and you can then still sell the product, you're highly likely to be more profitable and protected.
So leading on from sales, of course, is marketing. How do we get as many people, or have as many eyeballs as we can interested in our product or service? There are a number of ways that we can market, of course, whether we're using PR, online, offline, etc. And I know they have different definitions. But in your experience, what have been some of the marketing or PR strategies that you think work?
So if I go back historically to the early days, I can genuinely say that we had a tiny to nominal, nearly immeasurable small budget for any advertising. I actually, in the whole development of a 17-year business, which was making 3.3 million EBITDA, never used PR. I did have a web, but in my industry and hotel sector at the time when Pacific built, which is now 25 years ago, the web was beginning, and when we needed a web line, first of all, people put catalogues online. Of course, we were trying to be the cutting edge at that. But actually then, on researching my customers' behaviour, where do they go, I discovered that the housekeeper always gets the worst computer in the basement. It never works. So what's the point? She can't even see what I'm trying to deliver to her. So actually, where I think I was very lucky is my first job was learning. I used to sell premiums and giveaways. And some of the cleverest stuff that we did is, we bought 2,000 great big yellow clips. I mean, plastic clips. I know that they were $1.20 Hong Kong, which is peanuts, and then we branded them in fun, engaging messages. And it was a way of housekeepers keeping their stacks of paper together, because we'd asked them what would they like. We even gave them those extended keychain things because we asked them what would be useful. And housekeepers, I genuinely spoke at a housekeepers conference a year ago. 25 years on, she's raving about a plastic keychain which suited a need and got Pacific on the map. So I mean, my view is you get a marketing checklist off the internet, and you then ask the customer, what do they read? And to some extent we have to experiment. So with Gate 8 luggage, we're experimenting. Do we go in the investment pages? Are we on board airlines? So it's a constant test play when you're selling B2C. That's new for me. It's not easy, and there's media rates, and there's all these lessons to learn. But ultimately, keep asking questions. And most of all, where you can capture results by discount codes or by tracking codes, invest wisely to understand what's working.
Really good point. I think anything, especially, it doesn't matter what size you are, if you're investing in marketing, to make it trackable, to make it measurable, and to be able to cut it short and replace it if it's not working.
Because it's expensive. I mean, it's horrific.
It is. It is indeed. We both know that. That's for sure. Let's talk about branding. When we hear that word, personally, when I hear that word, I think of brands. Most of the time, they're products. If I think of the word brand, I think of what I wear, what I drive, what I resonate with. But a lot of us sell services. I sell a service. I'd like to think we have a brand. What are your thoughts on the whole concept of what a brand means to businesses, and how can we try and enhance it?
So I only ever speak from personal experience.
Of course.
Where I feel I can add something. Pacific Direct was not the first name for my company. I came to market as a kid on the block, and I called it Pacific Manufacturing. And then I found out as a sole trader I needed to become a limited company. And I looked, and some other guy had got this name. So there I am. I've been in business 2-3 years. I haven't really done my proper brand check because I'm a hooligan entrepreneur. And I have to change my name. I call my brother. I say, look, what am I going to do? Everybody knows me as Pacific Manufacturing. And he says, just call yourself Pacific Direct, because everybody will think that's quite cool, it's quite immediate, it's quite urgent, it's quite a lot about you, and I'll know it's because you're a direct little what's it. And the fact is that in my case, because I was B2B, and because I was licensing someone else's products, the fact that I wasn't worried about my brand meant that I could uplift Asprey and Penhaligon's and the beautiful brands we had. I recently have had an investment which has gone from a sort of old world, and it's a B2C product, James and Longbourn, which to me sounded like a suit company or an established old English firm, who are selling the best and cutting edge travel business where you avoid check-ins, save time and money. We thought, God, James and Longbourn, there's no congruousness about it, so we changed the brand to Gate 8. Gate 8 luggage, small logo, easy to remember, actually ironically Chinese lucky number 8. I grew up in Asia, it's very important to me.
Hong Kong, right?
So there's a sentimentality.
I was born in Hong Kong too.
But actually the fact that it's about a gate, it's about travel, it really resonates with our customers. So I think, it can be very important, but the one thing I'll tell you is I don't spend money on branding experts. I think it's a bottle of wine down the pub with some mates. because I think you'll get as good a result.
Yeah. I want to talk now about managing people. So you've obviously, as what started as a small business, expanded largely, and you had a lot of experience with getting the best out of individuals in your team. What advice can you share with our viewers on that topic?
I sound like a religious freak, which I'm not, which is do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. And I'm not particularly religious, but actually I know that if I get to know someone, and I'm not perfect like any leader, but I work really hard to try and relate to someone, to educate and share experiences, but I also want to push people constantly outside their comfort zones. And the reason that I do that is I believe, and maybe I have enough experience probably to say I've seen it work too many times not to believe, is that if you see a person grow, and if you are part of that growth process which pushes them out of their comfort zone, and I've recently had a young entrepreneur who is running out of money. He's very uncomfortable because he's growing a great product and a great business, and he's afraid of doing an international, really big business trip. And I say, come on, book it, go. I'll give you the tools, give you the ammunition. The growth in confidence, not just the results, but the ability and belief in themselves to, get to far-flung places, sell a product, introduce it to a market and go, that wasn't too terrible. My God, you've spring-bided. So that success piece around, first of all, reading a person and understanding how far you could and should push them, and then secondarily supporting them and treating people like human beings, which actually takes more time and effort than you think. And then finally, and really importantly, because I am a manipulative commercial bitch, is I will reward people for good performance. And that can be small things. So recently one of my partners was staying in a hotel with his wife. I knew which hotel it was. He's had a phenomenal start to the year. He's really on it. You can see the performance is up. I got a bottle of champagne sent to his wife and him in a hotel, out of the sky blue. It's a phone call. It's a small investment. Hopefully that'll make him think that he's been noted, and the returns hopefully will continue.
Absolutely. Flip side of the coin, what if they're not performing? Not as someone that's obviously someone that you've invested in, but in the years that have gone past and even now today, the employees, what do we do if they're not performing?
In the previous question, I said that I'm pretty commercial. So I'm also I've had a lot of years of experience of recruiting, lots of different people, nationalities.
Absolutely. But
the bottom line is that if you outline from the outset a clear role expectation, and the role expectation is linked to key performance indicators, which is the way I want you to work and the reason you've got the job. And from that, you have a reward system that is directly impacting someone's returns for effort. And then probably a company pot, and it's more complex than it sounds, but it's doable everywhere. Then when there is a lack of performance, I am very clear. Different countries have different policies. Some of them are farcical, but you have to play by the rules. So run a warnings process. But always be open with the communication. And I think if you're a decent leader and you've got good structure in place, actually it is very rare that you should get to the point where there is a lack of agreement, to the point where it is so painful that either the person hasn't, fundamentally, salespeople, you live or die by your target. I employ you because you're going to achieve goals. If you don't achieve your goals, I'm going to sack you. Is that clear? Do you think you can cope with these targets if you're given X and Y report? As long as I can honestly say, I gave you the support, I gave you the training, I've given you everything, you're not a salesperson, find another job. Or go and sell badly for someone else, right? So I'm brutal about that. And frankly, that's why salespeople should earn more. Because they have exponential earnings, because they live or die by the sword. In other roles, frankly, still performance managed. And then it's about not what people call appraisals, in my opinion, but career development reviews. I want my people to grow. I want an absolute clarity around a lack of tolerance around education. You have to learn. You have to not stand still. You have to be looking for the next challenge. And the luck of the position that I've been in is we've always been fast growth. So there's always another challenge. Except, of course, when I nearly lost the business, there's downturn. You have to cope with that too.
Let's talk now, Lara, about raising finance. The people who are watching this section obviously are on it because they're interested in getting some ideas as to how. Just some tips from you, if you could, please. What are some of the things that they have to be doing if they're going to have any chance?
It is ironically the day of my month that I call Misery Day is when I'm looking at the finance piece, because I hate it. I don't enjoy it, but it's a must-do day. And the raising of the finance piece is knowing your numbers and then having the battle pack, for want of a better description. So at the most basic level, everybody needs to know that bank finance is the cheapest finance in town. The trouble is that without a proven track record, and banks won't normally lend to a small business less than 2 to 3 years of trading, unless there's a really compelling investor case, partnership. You know, if you bring an old grey-haired, highly wealthy individual and shareholder who's active in your business, you're more likely to get the money.
Yeah, great point.
The truth is that that's going to cost you equity. Equities, I think the card you should release less, but in some cases there is a really intelligent reason to sell your equity, because the partner that comes to the party brings enough to make you feel it was, is, and making things purposeful and possible. That's a valuable card. So equity can be worth it, but a pound is not a pound, if you see what I mean. Clearly there are a lot more ways, all the way up to crowdfunding and kickstarting propositions and the new dynamics in town, but I talk in very clear ambition for entrepreneurs to retain equity in as much as they can. There are other reasons also emotionally that you may want a partner, so then there's 2 partners. But I think that a good business plan, P&L, cash flow forecast, an awareness of your stock management and how it impacts you. If you're trading, knowledge about currency. If you go to the right kind of lenders and you have competency, some proven track record, and the intelligence of commercial business speaking, which is something you learn, then you should get the funding, frankly, if you can sell your product and your performance well enough.
Absolutely. One thing I just wanted to get your thoughts on too personally is, I think one of the mistakes that people make if they're trying to raise finance, they will happily run around and speak to anyone and everyone where there might be some chance.
Devaluing their proposition.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean...
Be more focused, be more targeted.
And be I mean, I'm very lucky that the people that I'm working with, who I have invested in, have been highly intelligent about why they want me on board. So my China background and my trading knowledge, possibly my product stuff, the internationalization of my outlook, because I'm a very global player. They've really picked me, and I feel very privileged for that reason to be involved in these companies. And in some cases I've picked my general managers, like in Centred, where Faye worked for me. She was my first graduate recruit. I think that synergy also creates trust and value.
Lara, I wanted to talk now about internationalizing your company, taking your business to other parts of the world. People who are watching this now want to get some ideas from yourself about what they need to be doing if this is going to be a successful venture to take your brand, to take your products to other parts of the world. What would you say?
So I mean, I'm highly export orientated. I was born in Germany, grew up in Scotland, went to school in Hong Kong at some stage, worked in Hong Kong for my first job, and in the Middle East and in New Zealand. So I see the world as a small place. So yes. I speak biasly, but with experience of exporting to 110 countries. I had factories into China and the Czech Republic and a joint venture in Egypt. And everything I can tell you about that experience tells me that export's much more fun than stealing someone else's cake at home. So if the marketplace in UK is your cake, go and steal someone else's cake, because that's more profitable. And there are so many upsides. The English language, the trust of the Brit abroad. And actually, you know, I think the trust of anybody that presents themselves in an open way, gets off their backside and travels, creates a trust. So I don't care whether you're in Uzbekistan selling in Egypt. And, you know, I think if you go with an open mind, a desire to understand somebody's culture and respect that culture, respect their way of doing business, but bring new ideas, a passion and an infectiousness about your product. You've got to do homework, shipping, freight, import duties, hideous stuff. It's not rocket science. And shipping's been around a very long time, so ask lots of people. I think that when you then set up offices abroad, the enormous learnings for me is employ locals in foreign countries, try and employ from the competition to get a really big step up fast. I think doing trade shows is a brilliant way of meeting new salespeople, new agents, new opportunities. But I also think just getting off your backside and going to a country to understand that retail marketplace or that opportunity scale, particularly now when travel is frankly so cheap, it's mind-boggling that we don't have greater export.
Do we start one country at a time?
I've never done much one at a time. I started where I was convinced that there was truly a market with low-hanging fruit. I do think that you should bite off what you can chew, and everybody sort of thinks, big country, big opportunity. Well, actually, that's a big challenge too. So as opposed to going to Germany and France, initially I went to the Czech Republic. Out of that Czech Republic experience, we could work our way back through Europe, but really intelligently and with huge advantages of the lessons we'd learned. I lived and worked in the Middle East. Dubai is a great starting place, but don't just assume that that's the only market. There are some very big markets, and don't be afraid that the Middle East is unsettled. I think there's some great stability in the Gulf. In Asia, if I'm using a springboard, I'd use Singapore or Hong Kong because it's, international trading markets and lots of advantages. And also use the embassies of countries that you're involved in. You'll have international viewers, and milk that value. You're a taxpayer wherever you are in the world. Make those other buggers work for you. You pay for them. So that's sort of some of the ideas.
Excellent. That's brilliant advice. Thank you. And different too, because unlike a lot of the people who we've interviewed, your international experience is just so diverse. So really, really great insights. Thank you. Lara, I've got my last question for you, so thank you again for being here. Such a pleasure to have you. And this one is about exiting. So we started the conversation where you were telling us about the journey and your exit from your company, which was a fantastic result for yourself. Well done again.
Thank you.
You've been through it, and you're building businesses now to most likely do it again.
Yeah.
What advice can you give for people watching this? Should they be thinking about exit right now? Does it come? What can they be doing now to get the best valuation?
The simple advice that I have that worked for me was I had a goal about what I wanted to achieve. It wasn't about making money or becoming rich. It was about security for my family. And for me, that was enough to get me up every day and to have the freedom to do what I did and live by the decisions I made. Often wrong, sometimes right, always making progress because you're always learning. And only at the point where you feel that your business has outgrown your competency should you really think strongly about the exit card. And then you have to make damn sure that the management team and the organisation that you're running can run without you, or else it is not maximising its value potential for you when you leave. Nobody's going to buy a business from an owner that says they want to go who hasn't got a management team who can deliver the results without them. It's common sense, right? But actually people don't think about exit in simple terms. And the other thing I think that's an imperative is get education. So I went to Stanford for a week on a course. I went and learned deeper negotiating skills specifically around exit. I went to lots of events around acquisitions of businesses to imagine if I was in the other shoes, what would I be looking for? Could my business do that? And then I have to say it's the most hideous roller coaster from hell of a period of time in your life, which I also found hugely exciting because I was learning stuff. I was going to the city, which was new, but much more importantly, learning a language of exit. And just be really clear. You're in it for a reason, you want a price, and you have to be clear about your boundaries, and you have to be very brave. And then you have to be very honest with yourself, which is what you're prepared to take and what you're not prepared to take. Are you willing to walk? Are you not willing to walk from the price you're being offered? And it is, without question, far more emotional than a marriage, a divorce, or a death.
And I have to ask, when you started attending all those courses, which is great advice, by the way, especially going to the ones that the acquirers would be going to, really great advice. Had the phone started ringing yet?
Yeah, I mean, in our case...
For offers for your company, I mean.
Yeah, no, I mean, in our case, almost from year 3, 4, people were, I mean, sometimes trying to recruit me, which I found amusing because they hadn't done their homework on who owned the business. But you know, we had a number of approaches, and actually over a period of time I started to learn that they were just a waste of time. If I didn't want to go, why bother having the conversation about exiting? And that's brave in the sense that you're going, quite like to know what they think I'm worth, but actually that's just vanity. It's not adding any value. Particularly if if you genuinely are loving what you're doing, which it won't happen every day of running a business. And I think you get to a point, in my case, I got to a point where I travelled a lot. I wanted to stay in the business actually, but downgrade my total sacrifice and my total risk, which is the other piece. And I wish more people would think about taking money off the table, but not necessarily exiting their proposition, because you can do that.
Are you talking about an earn-out over a period of time? Or?
No, I don't like earn-out. Okay. I'd work rigorously to take cash and cash only, because that's the value of your business. And what I think I'm saying is that there are a lot of people who sell a business, which if they restructured that business and they worked out the financial competencies, they could release cash, which makes them feel, actually I feel better, but I'm now in it for the longer haul.
Gotcha.
And I think that can be huge, because it makes someone feel they've earned something, but they haven't sold their first baby.
Yeah.
That was how I looked at it.
Absolutely. Lara Morgan, thank you so much.
You're really
Great
welcome.
to have you in here.
Yeah, you're welcome.
If you guys enjoyed that interview as much as I did, and you'd like to see some more information on Lara, you can click on her profile below. Cheers.